The best life is possible and achievable. All you need to do is reorganize your energy and you'll begin the healing process. Welcome to Intent Healing with Dr. Raji. Intent Healing is healing with the power of intention by accessing energies prior to consciousness. You can begin to feel the benefits immediately. Now, here is Dr. Raji.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Raji, your host, the Intent Healing Show. Change your energy, transform your life. One of the most powerful ways that can shift our energies and can kickstart transformation in any aspect of our lives, be it business, relationships, career, or anything else, is the ability to be able to see with clarity and envision solutions and take action. Our guest today is on a mission, and that is to teach the world to see. He is Dan Rome, the author of the international bestseller, The Back of the Napkin, and the latest book, Blah, 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 What to Do When Words Don't Work. So our guest is Dan, and his consulting clients have included Microsoft, Google, Walmart, Boeing, Lucasfilm, The Gap, the US Navy, and the White House Office of Communications. His healthcare analysis was named Business Week's Best Presentation of 2009. Hi, Dan. I'm so happy and thrilled to have you on my show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raji. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, Dan, I thought I'll just start by sharing as to what really got me interested in your work. Actually, a lot of the work that I do, especially the healing work, revolves around moving energies and helping people to see. Because more often than not, the solution that is there right in front of them, many of them are either unable to see or many a times unwilling to see. So, and it was when I decided to create a visual course out of my ebook, which is How to Heal Autism and ADHD in 30 Days, is when I came across your books. And later on, I joined your Napkin Academy, which is one of the best and brilliant resource for anyone who's looking to gain and impart visual clarity, is what I feel. And your tools that you share with us there are so simple, easy, and effective. And so that's how I came to know about your wonderful work and participate in it as well as a student. So my first question now would be, what exactly motivated or inspired you to embark on this mission to teach the world to see?
Well, Raji, I am one of those people who has always drawn. Even from the time that I was very young, I remember that my first real source of joy when I was by myself was drawing pictures. And I would draw pictures of everything, as any child would do. And my first job when I finished university was actually working as a graphic designer. So it made perfect sense that I drew all of the time, because anybody that does a lot of graphic design spends a lot of time with a pen and a paper drawing out ideas. But what was unexpected to me was that later on, when I moved into business consulting and into the boardroom of big companies, was the fact that I drew made me very strange, because nobody else in the room would think that drawing was a valid way of describing something. And so I thought, well, this is really interesting. For me, being able to see my idea by putting it on a piece of paper has always been very important. And I find it so surprising that here in business, which really is my background, this notion of being able to see the problem is something that has crossed nobody's mind. And that's really what launched me on the mission of saying, well, I know how powerful this is. I would like to see other people using their ability to see the world in order to help them solve problems. So Raji, that's what got me started.
Okay, that's quite an interesting story, because see, what was intuitive and which came naturally to you, and as it is, you were able to see it from kind of outside, I would say, because everyone, what they thought was normal as not really have including any visual components in their work, so to speak, and you were sharing this with them. That's very interesting. What do you think prevents people from seeing? Because I have my list that I have observed with my patients and clients that I feel blocks them from seeing and taking action. And I help them, I offer a solution by, moving energies that remove the blocks and set them free to take specific action or steps in their lives. But I would love to hear what it is that you think or feel is preventing people from actually seeing?
Well, Raji, I think that all of us, I know that all of us are born with an innate ability to see. And just to give a couple of scientific data points, that if you consider all of the neurons that are in the human brain that are related to processing sensory information, so that is to say, the entire capacity of our brain to process the world around us through our sense of touch, through our sense of taste, smell, hearing, vision, all of those, more than 70% of those neurons are focused on vision. It could be said that more of the human mind is focused on processing vision than any other thing that we do. And yet somehow in our educational system, we do not value that incredibly powerful ability. We don't train ourselves. We don't train our children how to take advantage of this incredible visual ability that we have. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood here, because clearly education to become verbally literate is absolutely critical, and that takes a long time. So it makes sense that we spend years and years teaching our children how to read and write and effectively construct a sentence, in order to express an idea, and that's wonderful. But the thing that shocks me is that we don't spend any time whatsoever, not 1 hour in our entire child's life, telling them or showing them how to take advantage of this incredible ability that we're born with to see the world and to recognize the visual power that we have to understand what is going on around us. Because most of our cognition, most of our understanding of how the world works is based on what we have seen. And yet we have no tools, no grammar, no structure, no emphasis beyond the time that a child is usually 6 or 7 years old to emphasize the visual. And I think it's not a fear of being able to see. I think that it's just a neglect. And a large part has to do with what we consider intelligence. We have come to believe that intelligence is the ability to speak, and that if we are able to describe an idea or a problem in linear form, A, B, C, D, using words in a linear fashion, that we understand the idea. Now, that's wonderful, but let's face it, that is far less than half of our real capacity. Because if we think about truly complicated problems of life, problems of business, challenges of success, challenges of the family life, all of these problems have many, many parts to them. They're multidimensional, they're moving in competing ways, and it is impossible to adequately describe those kinds of challenges in a linear fashion. What we need to do is be able to look at all the pieces, and as we start to draw them out, literally take a pen and a piece of paper and draw out the pieces with little circles, boxes, arrows, give them labels, what have you. But put the pieces in front of us where we can see them, and that is when we let our mind's 75% capacity for vision really start to take hold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is truly amazing. And I feel like what I'm getting out of this is a lot of conditioning that is going on, in our childhood. Probably the whole human condition itself, from what you're saying, is such that we place so much of emphasis on speaking and talking as a way of communication. And at some level, we have kind of ignored the major visual component of it, which is biologically, which makes sense as well. Like you're saying, it's more than 70% of, our sensory understanding of so many things. That's truly amazing. So what do you think would help us to see better with clarity? So what would you say are the important things, that could help us to see with more clarity?
Well, Raji, I like to break what I call the visual thinking process down into 4 discrete steps. And I'll tell you why I've created this process after I share with you the process itself. I use 4 words to describe the process. The first step is to look. We must develop a better ability to look at the world around us. The second step is to see. The third step is to imagine. And the fourth step is to show. So to put those in order, we look, then we see, then we imagine, than we show. Now, let me take a moment to describe in a little bit more detail what I mean by this.
Sure.
One of the great problems that we have in becoming better visual thinkers is that most of us are afraid of drawing. We believe, for some reason, that we are terrible at drawing, and so we're actually afraid to try. And although there is a big difference between drawing and seeing, it is true that drawing is the best exercise that we have for putting our visual thinking capacity into practice, because it makes it intentional and it makes it visual and visible. What I mean by that is, if you think about it, the moment we open our eyes in any situation, whether we're waking up in the morning or we're watching a movie or we're walking down the street, the moment we open our eyes, the first thing that happens is our mind looks at the world. It's a passive process. It's simply the scanning of the world in front of us to try to begin to pick up the information that's available to us. And as I say, it's something that's unconscious, it's preconscious. It's something that we have very, very little control over. It's just what our mind naturally does. We scan the horizon, we see where the sun is, we see where the clouds are, we see which way is up, we see which way is down. And that is where we move into step number 2, which is the seeing step. And this is much more active. This is much more conscious and intentional. Again, much of it takes place in kind of the background of our mind that we're not aware of. But seeing is where we begin to recognize the patterns of the items that are in front of us. So looking is to just bring the image into our mind. Seeing is where we begin to take that image apart and say, oh, look, this over here is a car. Oh, I see that. Oh, there are some people over there. I see that. There's a building over there, what have you. So I then have to see. The next step then is when I am taking what's in my mind's eye, now that I've seen it, and I imagine how to change it. I imagine how to move it. And what I mean by that is when we're imagining something, we're actually seeing with our eyes closed. We're using the same visual processing system, but now that we have already seen the world around us, we bring it into our mind. And when it is inside our mind, this is through dreaming, this is through using our imagination, we're actually able to conjure up imagery that does not physically exist in front of us. We take the things that we saw, we bring them into our mind, and we imagine how we might change them. That is to say, well, what would happen if I turned it upside down? Or what would happen if I took it apart? Or what would it look like if I shined the light on it the other direction? This is what we can do in our mind's eye, and this is where we actually come up with solutions, because we're creating them in our mind. And then once we've seen in our mind's eye an alternative view to what our eyes actually saw, we then go to the last step, which is to show. And this is where we draw it out. We draw what we saw in our mind's eye so that we can visually share it with somebody else and say, oh, look over here, look at what I saw. Did you see the same thing? And showing becomes the process of sharing our idea visually, communicating our idea visually to someone else. And then if we've done it well, as we show our idea to them, that person starts the process over for themselves by doing what? Well, by looking at what we've drawn, and then they see and they imagine and they show, and so on. And so you get this very virtuous cycle based entirely on our ability to look at the world, see the patterns, imagine what they mean, and then show them to somebody else.
Okay, this is perfect. And like I said, when I became a cadet in your Napkin Academy, and when I actually started correlating with what I'm doing, it all made perfect sense to me, because this is somehow or the other, this is exactly how I go about doing my healing process as well. And a large component of it involves imagination, or seeing the energy field of the person in its perfect form, which is the real form actually. So it's really, it has a very personal significance to me in terms of, how I'm applying what you've described just now in my healing practice as well. This is really beautiful. And thank you. In your latest book, coming to your latest book, Dan, which is blah, 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 what do you do, what to do when words don't work. You talk about vivid thinking as a solution to the problem that you've stated, and I quote, "We talk so much that we don't think very well." In other words, blah, blah, blah. So can you please tell us a few things about what exactly is vivid thinking? And before that, I did read up something about the blah blah meter, which interested me in your latest book. So could you please share something about both of these, the blah blah meter, and what do you mean by vivid thinking?
Okay, Raji, let's start with vivid thinking. Vivid thinking is the underpinning of pretty much my entire approach to helping people be more clear in thinking about their problems and coming up with new solutions to them. Vivid is a mnemonic device. It's kind of an acronym, spelled, of course, VIVID. And I'm a big believer that in order to help us remember things, it helps to give our ideas visual form, because most of our memory comes in the form of visuals. So it turns out that human beings are actually very poor at being able to remember words, which is so ironic given the fact that most of our education is based around memorizing words. Most of our memory, in fact, almost all of our memories are stored as visual imagery. And that's why we're able to conjure up things that took place years and years ago. In some case, decades ago. We can remember from our life. We don't remember them in words. We remember them in pictures. So vivid is my pictorial representation of a word. The word stands for VIVID, which means VI stands for visual. The second V stands for verbal, and ID stands for interdependent. So if we put that together, what we get is visual, verbal, interdependent thinking. It's a very simple way of saying, I will no longer believe that you have fully thought through your idea if you can only talk about it. Nor will I believe that you have fully thought through your idea if you can only draw it out. In order to know that we have fully thought through and fully explored our idea, we must have both a verbal representation of the idea and a visual representation. It's when we've done both, when we have the visual and the verbal working interdependently, complementary fashion, they're dependent on each other, one feeds the other. That is when the engine in our mind really works at full capacity and we really begin to understand the idea. The tools in the book Blah, Blah, Blah are a series of tools that help us become vivid, that help us say, because we've normally been taught to talk through a problem, what we really need to develop is our ability to visualize the problem. So let's use the tools of spoken language, grammar, syntax, vocabulary, structure. Let's use those tools as a launching pad, as a starting point for becoming more visual. I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, you all have to learn how to draw tomorrow. That would be crazy. Instead, let's say, let's take what we already know how to do because we've been trained and use that to start the visual process. And that's where vivid thinking comes in. Now, you brought up something that I call the blah-meter, or the blah meter. Yeah. Now, the idea here was to get us started. I wanted to encourage people, myself in particular, to recognize that so much of what we hear is garbage. So much of what we hear does not actually address the real problem. So I thought, well, if someone tells me something and it's complicated and it's obscure and I don't understand it, does that mean that I'm stupid? And the answer is no. Yeah. It doesn't. It means that the idea has not been expressed well. We have a very strange concept that says that if I can explain an idea in words and you don't understand it, that it's your fault, that you're the one who's stupid or ignorant. That's completely backwards. True. If you cannot understand the words that I've said, it's because I've used my words poorly. I believe so much is incumbent on the clarity of the thinking of the teacher. If the teacher cannot make him or herself clear, it is the teacher's fault, not the student's fault. And so the blah-blahmeter becomes the student's tool of detecting the incoming verbal message to say, if I do not understand it, why? Is it because the message is too unclear? Or is it because the message is too obscure? Or is it because you might not actually want me to understand the message you're really trying to convey, and so you're masking your idea behind false words in order to confuse me? So the blablometer becomes a very simple little matrix that says, take what you're hearing, map it back to these different levels of what I refer to as blah, 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 different levels of unclarity, and try to determine what is the nature of the message that we're detecting. Is it a positive message that I'm not understanding because it's been unclear? If that's the case, then let's use our vivid tools to make the message more clear. That's one option. If, however, at the more extreme case, the message that I'm hearing is unclear to me because the message is masking the truth, then what I will do is I will use my vivid tools to take the message apart and begin to expose the kernel of truth which is within that message. So I know this is a little bit complicated the way I'm describing it, but the blablometer is a simple tool. It allows us to filter the incoming information to detect for ourselves what makes sense and what doesn't, and why that might be. And then once we've detected it, how would we use our visual tools and our vivid tools to make it more clear so that we do understand it better?
And Dan, at this point, I would strongly recommend and suggest to whoever is listening, to our listeners who may be interested in your work and whatever you've shared with us, to actually go through your book, Blah, Blah, Blah. And that the visual representation of what you have conveyed or tried to convey here is brilliantly presented there. One picture tells all there. So I would strongly suggest and recommend whoever is interested in this from among our listeners to go ahead and take a look at your book. Now, coming to the other thing that I was finding very interesting, and I'm sure our audience will also love to hear from you. Could you please share something with us about your White House experience? How did that happen? And did you get to meet the president?
Unfortunately, I did not get to meet the president. That would have been lovely. No. So I'll tell you the story briefly. About 3 years ago here in the United States, I started to become concerned because as people may be aware, there is a tremendous debate, political debate, which is raging in the United States about the nature of healthcare. And in the end, it boils down to a pretty simple equation. There are people who believe that healthcare is the responsibility of the government, and there are people who believe that healthcare is the responsibility of the individual. And of course, both are right and both are wrong. But what's happened in a highly politicized environment such as we have here is the discussion has become very complex, and it's become a source of great anger and angst in our country. And in fact, you see within the United States a pretty clear split which has become very polarized between people who have these opposing views about the nature of healthcare. What brought this to the front of the mind of so many people in the United States is that when President Obama came into power, one of the things that he did was begin a series of policies, trying to pass a series of policies on healthcare reform. And what became a source of concern to me was that many, many people it seemed intentionally obscuring what the nature of healthcare in our country is really about in order to make a political point. And there started to become a lot of fighting, quite literally fighting about healthcare reform. And I thought, this is very unfortunate. This is crazy. This is something we should all understand. I think the problem, I said to myself, is that the issues are so complex and they're not being made visual that it's very easy to distort them. And so what I decided to do was see if I couldn't draw a series of simple pictures that really explained what healthcare reform was about and what it was not about.
Okay.
And so I worked with healthcare experts to draw this series of simple pictures. And it received a tremendous amount of positive feedback. In fact, through where I posted my series of drawings online, I received hundreds of thousands, approaching millions of downloads of people looking at the pictures, which led me to be invited by various news organizations in the United States to come on television and use my pictures to begin to explain the underlying messages of healthcare reform, which I was able to do. And after I was able to deliver that message on one of the newscasts that was actually very much in opposition to the president, I received a call from the White House Office of Communications asking if I would be willing to come to Washington, D.C. and visit with them and explain to them how I'd used pictures to try to clarify this healthcare reform issue. And it was wonderful because I had about an hour and a half to spend with members of the White House Office of Communications, and we had actually a very nice time. There's a big whiteboard in the room, an erasable board, and so we drew on the wall how it might be possible to use the tools of vivid thinking to explain all kinds of ideas related to policy, economics, education, healthcare. And I've since had a chance to go to more meetings and do a little bit of consulting with people that are putting some of the messages together. So it's been incredibly gratifying for me. And Raji, really for the simple reason to say, when I began this process, I was not an expert in healthcare. But by virtue of using my vivid tools and being the person who drew the pictures, I became very conversant in the underlying nuances and mechanisms of healthcare reform. And by virtue of drawing the pictures, I started to become a recognized expert. And I will close my thought on this by saying, think of more powerful lesson of the power of becoming a good visual thinker than that one right there. If you draw the picture, you become the expert. And think about that for a moment.
No, that's really amazing. And I sure hope that, and I have a feeling that, this will really help the situation, because a more or less similar situation also prevails in India as far as the healthcare system is concerned, and which is one of the other reasons why I was interested in asking you this question. Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, Dan, could you please share with our audience as to where they can access your services, your products, or if they want to have a consultation with you? I mean, like, how do they go about doing that? Is it through your website, or is there any other means by which they can get in touch with you? Can you please share some details about that?
Absolutely. And Raji, you already mentioned it. My favorite online tool, my favorite online product these days is something that I launched 5 months ago, and it's called the Napkin Academy. It's very simple to access. It's simply napkinacademy.com. And what it is it's my online training. So what I've done is I've taken all of the tools and rules and lessons that are in my books, and I've created a series of short videos about them. And so the Napkin Academy has many of the videos available for free. If someone wants access to the entire video library, it is a paid site, but I've tried to keep the cost as low as I possibly can. But what you can do is if someone's interested in getting more information, go to the napkinacademy.com, or you can simply write me an email. And the best way to reach me is just my name, Dan, at danroam.com. And I will spell that URL. It's DANROAM.com. So Dan at danroam.com. I make a point of trying to respond to every question that I receive. Sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, but I really do try to make a point to share the power of visual thinking with everyone. So if someone has a question, I encourage people to take a look at the napkinacademy.com. There are areas there where it's possible to write comments. In fact, Raji, that's how you originally got in touch with me. So I check those comments. I check those comments every day, and I make a point of responding to all of them. Or just send me an email, and I will absolutely do my best to reply. And then, of course, if someone has access to my books, they're available through all major bookstores. And again, as you mentioned, the back of the napkin, and then blah, blah, blah. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who's had a chance to read them and share ideas.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I would definitely encourage our audience to go to your website and take a look at the resources that are there, because I can personally say I'm very, very happy from what I gained. I mean, the knowledge, the experience, and the way I'm actually applying all of that is so exciting for me in, turning around my book into a visual course. So I would definitely encourage everyone to go and take a look at your website. And I think we can wrap wrap up here. And thank you so much, Dan. I had a lovely time. I enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate the insights that you have shared with us. And I'm sure that all our listeners will definitely benefit from all of this. And I wish you the very best in everything you do. Thank you very much.
Raji, it has been my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out to me, and thank you for letting me tell you so much about visual thinking. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Find out what's happening on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Find out about new shows, featured guests, and what's up this week. Find us on Facebook by searching keyword Voice America.
Intent Healing with Dr. Raji is sponsored by the Heal Autism Now Foundation. Autism can be healed. Take your first step towards freedom from autism today. Help your loved ones with autism to live their best lives with joy and ease. Go to www.healautismnow.com and participate in the transformation right from today. You can order Dr. Raji's ebook on healing autism, as well as symptoms of ADHD and dyslexia. Learn more about how you and your child can benefit from these healing energies right away at healautismnow.com. That's www.healautismnow.com.
It's time to deepen your spiritual awareness and enhance your relationship with God. Listen for Into the Mystic, a journey of self-awareness and empowerment with your spiritual pathfinder, Jennifer Elizabeth Masters. Jennifer shares her own personal spiritual journey and practices with you to help you deepen your connection to the divine and ultimately become enlightened. Let Jennifer help you experience your inner radiance. Become a part of Into the Mystic every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America 7th Wave Channel.
Do you want to know what's really going on these days? Well, Capital Thinking takes you inside the worlds of policy, politics, law, and business. What happens in Washington, on Wall Street, and in our nation's legal system impacts your business every day. We're taking you on a behind-the-scenes tour of all of it. Each week, we bring you unfiltered conversation with a variety of influential policymakers, lawyers, and business leaders. I'm Kevin O'Neill, and I'm your host as Capital Thinking tours the halls of power. Join me for Capital Thinking on the Voice America Business Network each Thursday at noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific Time.
What's going on behind the scenes with your favorite Voice America show or host? For the latest news, visit the iRadio blog at iradioblog.com.
You are listening to Intent Healing with Dr. Raji. To connect with our program today, please call into the program toll-free in North America, 1-866-472-5795. That's 1-866-472-5795. You may also reach us via email at snowy123@gmail.com. Now, back to Intent Healing.
Welcome back, everyone. I just thought I'll start this segment by sharing with you this fact. Today is the day Mahatma Gandhi ji was born many years ago. Well, he may mean many things to many people. What Gandhi ji represents to me is the power of one. How one individual can align with his vision and change the lives of millions. And I want to remind you of this today. You as an individual have the power to transform your life by being who you truly are. A multidimensional spiritual being, having a human experience. So here we are this morning, open to fresh energies flowing into our lives. At this point, I'd like to mention that if anyone is interested in a healing session right now, you can call 866-472-5795. All right, I think it'll be worthwhile exploring the topic of seeing further, but this time from an energy perspective. I'm reminded of a quote from one of the greatest seer of all times, J. Krishnamurti. Isn't it interesting that the word seer is used for the greatest teachers throughout history? Fascinating, isn't it? If you're able to see with clarity, you are a teacher, and that is equal to wisdom. Anyway, coming back to the quote that JK has on seeing, he says, when there's only the organism without the self, perception both visual and non-visual, can never be distorted. Okay, so now the question arises, how does one be in this state that helps us to see with clarity? So it begs the question, what is it that is actually preventing us from being able to see in the first place? In the last segment, Dan had shared a few points with us, and I'd like to add and expand on that, like I mentioned earlier, from an energy perspective this time. There are basically 3 factors, I feel, that prevent people from being able to see clearly. One is, of course, fear. Fear of not wanting to see what is in front of our eyes because it's too painful to see, fear of change, or fear of the unknown, or fear of our own power sometimes. The second reason I would say would be low self-esteem, and that makes people become people pleasers. And here you may see, but you don't want to rock the boat, or you may want to please the other person just to feel good about yourself and want to maintain the status quo, remain in your comfort zone. So maybe you're seeing and yet not willing to do anything about it or bring about a change in the circumstance or the situation. The third reason I would say would be indulgences and addictions. Now, by indulgences, I mean indulging in self-pity or getting into the victim mode or going round and round in circles, because most people tend to get trapped in the mode of self-pity or victim mode. And that would be an indulgence that would prevent a person from being able to see with clarity. Other thing I would say is indulging in a role of authority. Like, for example, the role of a mother, the role of a teacher. Because what happens then is when we get into such role playing or get into the role, we identify with something or a view, a point of view or an opinion. And what happens is that leads us to defend it at any cost, whatever view or opinion that we are holding. And this by itself can prevent seeing. Now coming to the other part, that is addictions. Here I would emphasize more on addictive relationships, more often toxic or disharmonious relationships. And I don't necessarily mean addiction to substances, because many a times, believe it or not, some substances actually help a person to see with clarity, including some foods. Now, I'm not encouraging any form of substance addiction here. That's a whole show topic by itself. And maybe we can discuss that at a later date. What I'm trying to say here is one can definitely see with clarity without the need for substance addiction. And that's the point that I'm trying to make here. So what happens with all of this, what I just discussed now, there is fear, the low self-esteem, addictions and all of that, or indulgences, is that all of these represents stuck or stagnant energies. So this results in lack of energy, because many a times we really don't have the energy to see. We are not even interested in wanting to see. So there's this lack of energy because energies are stuck. And how one can experience that, or one can make out that, okay, there is this lack of energy is by the feeling. You may feel bored, you may be uninterested, you may feel tired or exhausted. Basically, you just are not interested in wanting to see. And all of this is actually a deep-seated conditioning. Alright, so now let's come to what helps us to see better. We just discussed what is preventing us from seeing anything or seeing things with clarity. Now let's come to what will help us to see better. And what I would say is it's a state of being. It's a state of being where there is no ego, no agendas, and you have attention and focus, and yet one is relaxed. This may seem contradictory because many people feel that when there is concentration or what they perceive as concentration, attention and focus, oftentimes they are very stressed in that situation, but that's not the state of being what I mean. This is a state where there is attention and focus and yet you feel relaxed. There is curiosity. It's a state of being where there is interest, there is flexibility and there is flow. And above everything, there is a freedom from conditioning of what one should see, should not see. All of that has been downloaded into us. We have been programmed or taught since our childhood by teachers, by parents, by our society. You're free from all of that. From all of that conditioning, then you can see with clarity. And actually the fact is that, we really don't just see with our eyes or just our visual apparatus. The act of perceiving involves the whole being, the whole body. And I would say it's a whole energy field. Because if you use only your eyes to see, your vision is very much limited. Because perceiving is a state of being that is active present. Because if you really see with your whole being, that brings its own action. This is very significant because many a times we think we see, or at least with our visual apparatus, but we're not able to go ahead and, take the specific steps or actions to bring about change. And sometimes we may not have the wisdom not to act also. So that confusion exists, or that lack of energy, or that conflict, or that contradiction exists when we use only our visual apparatus to see and not our whole being or a whole energy field. So I just mentioned earlier that, all energies get stuck, and which is why we are not able to see with clarity. So let's talk about how we can move the stuck energies. So one of the ways I would say is, of course, through awareness. And that's exactly what we are doing here. Even as you're listening with all of this discussion on this particular topic, what is happening is, even as you're listening, your energies are shifting. Your energies are moving. Mainly because the shift is happening because of the power of this awareness. More information is coming in and it's moving your energies because you're gaining insights into the situation or the problem. The other more powerful tool would be to actually channel energy and move the stuck energies. And this is what I've been doing right from the beginning of this call. I've been actually channeling energy, and I'm sure many of you will be experiencing it as you're listening as well. And the third point, or probably this, I should put it as the first point, would be intention, because this underlies everything that we are discussing and everything that has an impact on seeing. What is very important is the purity of your intention to want to see in the first place, because the purity of your intention to want to see has immense power to bring forth an immediate shift in your perception that leads you to clarity. So intention is very, very powerful, because many a times we just don't want to see. So unless that the desire or the want to see and the purity of the intent is there, it's less likely that you will be able to see with clarity. And of course, another thing that we need to be able to see is, of course, light. And that is, all of us know that we need light to see. But what I mean by light here is, as the stuck energies shift as a result of what all we have discussed so far, what happens is we are tapping into the light from within us. And that is enlightenment. So when we tap into the light that is there within us, that is enlightenment. So how do you know that this is happening within you? This you can know by the feeling that you experience. You feel lighter. There is a sense of ease and a sense of relief that, envelops you. So these feelings will give you a feeling and an understanding that you are seeing with your own light. At this point, I think I'd like to mention a few things that might be useful to all of you listening out there. I'd like to offer a gift for my listeners. To get a free gift of my healing CD where I have actually channeled energy, and that clears the energies of stress, exhaustion and overwhelm, you can go to my website, IntentHealing.com, and subscribe to my newsletter, and you get this priceless gift immediately. And the feedback that I've gotten so far about the effects of this gift has been amazing. The other things that I would like to share with you at this point is, there's my channel on YouTube. It is called IntentHealing Online. And whoever is interested can go and take a look at the videos that have been posted there. And I'll be posting more videos there as well of some healing that I've been doing. And that will be useful to you, I feel. And there's also this ebook that I have written, How to Heal Autism and ADHD in 30 Days. And if you'd like to order that book, I just want to say here that the money from what you order the book and that goes to the activities of the Heal Autism Now Foundation. So you can order the book from the site as well. And if you want to ask me any questions that you'd like me to respond on this show, you can write into snowy123@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer your questions. And I feel that'll be helpful and useful for all. And at this point, I think we can just use the next few minutes where I'll channel energy and we'll try to shift the energies surrounding whatever is preventing us from being able to see with clarity. So whoever is listening and who would like to experience these energies at this point and this shift here, I would encourage you to be in a seated position or in a lying down position, definitely not driving. You'll need to keep your eyes closed for a few seconds as I do this, and you simply have to listen to my words and the silence between the words, if there is any silence, and just allow the energies to flow through you. So that's it. So we'll do that right away. All right. Keep your eyes closed. Take a deep breath and make yourself comfortable wherever you're sitting at this point in time or lying down. Gather all your attention from any thoughts that may be there and bring your attention to my voice right here, right now. And as I continue to channel the healing energies, just allow yourself to be bathed in these energies. Whatever it is that has been preventing you from being able to see with clarity, either the fear, any limiting beliefs, anxiety, apprehension, anything at all, indulgences, addictions, anything surrounding this feeling of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy enough. If any or all of this, or anything apart from this, is preventing you from being able to see with clarity, all of those stagnant energies are completely leaving your system right here, right now. Take a deep breath and let go. And fresh new energies are pouring into you. These energies of one of clarity, immense clarity, intelligence, wisdom, kindness, grace, ease, lightness, a sense of feeling of connectedness with the larger force of the universe. This unlimited supply of energy is just pouring into you right here, right now. All the erroneous programming, both in your brain, the neural network of your brain, and your gut brain, all those erroneous programmings that were not serving you till this very moment, that were actually preventing you from being able to see with clarity and act with courage and the knowingness of what needs to be done in the moment. Whatever remaining erroneous network connections are still operating, regardless of where they have originated from your childhood experiences, from present life circumstances and experiences, limitations, limiting beliefs, conditionings, from parents, from teachers, from the society itself, or the whole conditioning of the human consciousness itself, extending years and years ago, probably eons ago, all of which that was interfering with this process of being able to see with clarity and act with courage and confidence. All of that, all of those erroneous networks, erroneous programmings, down to the level of your DNA, is completely leaving your system right here, right now. Take a deep breath and let go. And fresh energies of one of wisdom, of one of immense courage, confidence, of one of immense kindness and gentleness towards yourself, immense love towards yourself, extending, radiating out from you to others, is pouring into you. This unlimited supply of endless stream of universal energies is flowing into you, is pouring into you, right here, right now. And all of this is getting assimilated into your system, is getting assimilated into every single cell of your being. And as you're being aligned, and you're now in perfect alignment with the best of who you are, who you truly are. And so it is. You can take a deep breath, let go, open your eyes, and become aware of your surroundings when you're ready to do so. Take a deep breath and let go. All right. I think it's time for me to take your leave now. And I hope you enjoyed listening to me as much as I enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you. I'd like to thank our guest Dan Rome, who was with us today. His website is danrome.com or thenapkinacademy.com. And my website is IntentHealing.com. My YouTube channel is Intent Healing Online. And thank you for listening in. I appreciate your time. This is Raji, your host, signing off. And this was the Intent Healing Show. Let's connect again next Tuesday, 7 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America 7th Wave channel. Until next time, remain open to endless possibilities, change your energies, and transform your life. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.